Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Leigh Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the Stream Center for this week's episode of Run for Fun with Leigh Spann on WFLA Now. We designed this show to give you some easy ways to make running and walking and exercise in general just a little more enjoyable. So you just keep going out there. I'm your host, Leigh Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA in Tampa. I'm also an avid runner, and if you're like me, when I first started running, I thought there was one way to run. All out till you basically fell out. And guess what? That's not all that much fun. So over the years, I have learned and continue to learn about ways to make running just a little more enjoyable. And of course, one of the people that taught me most of what I know, my Coach Maria. Good morning, Coach.
Hi, Leigh. How are you? I hope you had a good weekend.
I did have a great weekend. I actually traveled and I got to run in 58-degree dew points.
Oh, wow. That's nice. It's not that low here.
No, yes, even in Maine, it wasn't. So this
it's been in the 60s.
Yeah, so it was nice. I got in nice long run in and was barely sweating. It was quite
feels
delightful.
So good.
And then I came back here.
Yeah.
Traveling is nice, but
it's nice to know you can still run, actually.
Yes, and it felt
you sometimes forget at this time of the year in Florida.
I wanted to say that we still have our Strava group, still about 123 members. So if you don't know what this is, Coach Maria and I started a Strava Run for Fun group. And so Strava is a free downloadable app you can put on your phone. And then as you go out and walk and run, it records all of the data. But we are using it more, right, Maria, as sort of like a social media. So yes, you put yours, you put your run out there, but you can talk to other members of our group. So just go and search for the clubs and for the groups, and you'll see WFLA Run for Fun. And then you can do things like ask questions. We had one of our more avid members here, was Rosario. I got to run with him on Global Running Day. And he wrote that he just signed up for the 2023 Rock and Roll Series half marathon in Clearwater. And 10 people commented to him talking about, when they were going and what they were doing to train. So we're really hoping that this sort of builds that running community that we know and love so much.
Yeah, it's nice that you have other people out there running with you, even if you can't do it side by side.
Even if you can't do it side by side. So if when you connect on social media, when you connect on the Strava group, hopefully when you're out there in October for that half marathon in Clearwater, you'll be able to connect in real life and celebrate. Because I commented to Rosario that a half marathon is such a wonderful distance because you have to put in the time and effort to train for it. And man, it is such a powerful feeling when you cross that finish line.
And you're not so trashed as you are after a marathon. It's nice. You can still do a lot that day and have a lot of fun. That course in particular is so pretty.
It doesn't. If it goes over any of the bridges in Clearwater?
Yeah, I think it does. 2 of the 3, I think. So yeah, it's hilly.
A little. The only kind of Florida hills you'll be able to find is if you go over bridges. But I always tell people that I would convince anyone to go train for and run a half marathon. But you got to come to the marathon on your own because it is more training. It is harder on your body. So you got to. I'm never going to convince someone to do a full marathon, but I will convince just about anybody. It is a doable distance that can give you just such a sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely.
So a lot of this, we designed this show, Maria, of course, about how to have fun with running, and what better way to have fun with running than to run with your 4-legged best friend. And so that's what, if you see at the bottom of your screen, how to properly go out and run and what that means, how can that be, of course, super fun, right? But you gotta do it right. And so that's why we're going
I'm pretty sure Mocha would not want to run with me, but
yes, well, you have a little Chihuahua and Pickles. And then everybody knows Pickles, my little dog, likes to sprint about 3/4 of the way up the driveway. But Kirsten Holt is here. She is a Tampa dog trainer, known as the Dog Wizard. So Kirsten, thank you so much for being with us. And what I want you to do is kind of tell people your backstory, where, how you became a dog trainer and what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Leigh, for having me, and it's nice to meet everyone here today. So I have a background in dog training that goes back to 2004. I started with specifically sport dog training and did more of the sports that I participated in were more flyball, frisbee, dock diving. So I just another dog enthusiast that like to get out and do things with my dog and create a bond and enjoy my friends. So through the years, I have also added different certifications, if you will, to my background. So I have different certifications in just general dog training. But to connect to what the topic is today, I also am a certified canine fitness trainer. So in 2015, I did complete a program with the University of Tennessee called the Certified Canine Fitness Trainer Program. And then since then, I have also added to that with another program called the Canine Strength and Conditioning Certification Program, and I'm actually a co-instructor for that program. So I'm very lucky that I get to work with other dog enthusiasts that want to enrich the average sport dog or pet dog owner's lives to keep their dogs active and healthy.
And so let's go to the canine fitness and canine strength and training. Why is that different than typical dog training? What does that entail?
So if you went to the gym
Okay.
and you had a fitness trainer and they're going to coach you on the proper techniques to do squats or arm lifts or what have you, there is the same concept there for dogs, believe it or not, that you can do specific exercises to target certain body parts, muscle groups, and make them stronger and increase performance. Or if there is a dog that's had an injury, how to, after rehab, come back and keep them stronger for long term. And so it is about proper body positions and techniques so that we're focusing on the right muscle groups and doing what we're intending to do with that.
I don't know about you, Maria, but I'd never heard of that. I mean, I knew that
I've never
doggy
heard of that.
push-ups are a thing.
That's awesome. I always love to
Yep.
hear people that are in careers that people don't know about. I mean, that's so neat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And so are now all of the Australian Shepherds, is that what they are? Are they yours?
They are mine. I have way too many, but they are all mine. I claim them.
And what are their names?
Well, let's see. The one in my lap, that's Misfit. And then next to me, the red Try is Rival. And then next to her is Wicked. And then little Bravo's sitting on the floor.
And now are Australian Shepherds good for fitness type dogs? I mean, I know that's what they're bred to run around and herd.
They want a purpose.
Yeah.
So it is a way to keep them engaged mentally and physically. Training creates them to have to use their brains and problem solve. So that's a good skill to have. And then they do have the activity level for that. So it does give them a way to kind of get that energy out and make life a little bit more manageable in my house.
All right. So today's rundown, as you see on the screen, was obviously running with a dog, but how to prepare and how to keep you and your pet safe. So that's one of the reasons why, we want to make running fun. And, if you have a dog that likes to run and to keep you safe. I mean, I know that there are people who use it as a safety tool, especially if you have one of the bigger, bigger dogs. But so to keep you and your pet safe, you really need to make sure, Kirsten, that they are well trained.
It is helpful. There are benefits to training. And so the thing is that if you have a dog that's going to go running with you, it is ideal that they know where their position next to your body is so that they don't wreak havoc and then you might trip and fall over them. So I think that a lot of people want to just get out and point and shoot their dog in one direction and just go. And sometimes it is best to start with building a foundation of training and what the dog can expect on those outings.
And I guess that's sort of like I would think that would be key, making sure the dog knows where it's supposed to be. So how would one train their dog to do that?
Absolutely. So a couple of ways. There are things where you can do your homework and do your own research and do it yourself. I would encourage someone that they need to build value to what that position is. So if it's shoulder to your leg, then that's the position you want to pay and reward. And you may not be able to go that mile distance. You may have to start with a couple of steps. If that's challenging, a lot of times what I like to think that we do as dog trainers is we're more of that interpreter that we can help communicate and understand. We speak dog. And so a lot of average pet owners speak human, and there's nothing wrong with that. So how can we bridge that gap and get everyone to understand how the dog learns and how to reinforce things and how to address things when they might be challenging. And so if it's challenging for an average pet owner to do that on their own, then they can do their homework and research reputable dog trainers that can help with those type of skills. And by that, then you would just look for reviews and you would go in and speak to them and you find out what their training techniques are and do they match with what, your style is as well.
And
is there a specific, sorry, Leigh,
okay.
Is there a specific, like a dog that's better to run with than other dogs, or can any dog be trained? How does that work?
Good question. I do believe that any dog can be trained. Some may be a little more challenging than others, but I do believe that with consistency and structure and the right methodology, any dog can be trained. And so when we talk about running with your dog, the breeds, some of the ones I would probably be a little more concerned with would be your Frenchies, your Bulldog breeds that have more of that, short nose that can make it a little more challenging for them to breathe, and especially in the Florida humidity there. But they're, look at the level of activity that those dogs have. So your Labs, your Shepherds, Weimaraners come to mind. It could be some very athletic dogs that like to build endurance and go. And so those would be some things I would consider. I would also consider age of the dog. Dogs their growth plates do not close until they're between 18 to 24 months of age. So with that being said, a lot of concussive pounding on pavement can affect joints later in life.
Wow.
That doesn't mean you can't take your little friend out for a little run around, but I would do it in moderation. And I might also pick your terrain, like grass over concrete.
And then you're saying specifically for those younger, under 2-year-old dogs. Is that way? And then as their plates, is that what you call them?
Growth plates.
Growth plates.
It's just like kids.
Yeah.
Kids have we all have growth plates. So when we mature, they're closed. And so that's what some of the things I would keep in mind when you're out running or walking with your dog.
And I mean, obviously, I'm thinking more about running on the sidewalk. So you certainly want to have your dog leashed. Mm-hmm. But are there different ways to leash a dog that for running?
So I see a lot of people with harnesses. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, or like some people have a belt.
A belt.
As opposed to holding it in their
mm-hmm.
hand. And again, the leash versus the collar. What, is it per dog's preference, or is there one that's better?
I'm challenged with harnesses. I think that a lot of people go to harnesses because they don't want to put a lot of pressure on the dog's neck. Mm-hmm. However, with that being said, if your dog isn't as trained, then they may want to pull against that harness, and it actually allows them to pull more. It encourages them to pull more than if you have more of a localized pressure to the neck, if you will. And so if your dog is trained and can work with the harness very well, then I say go for it. If it encourages them to pull more, then I would stop and spend a little more time training before I would advance onto that.
And, if someone just has a dog at their home, how do they assess where their dog is, before going out? Do they say, okay, my dog comes when I call? Is that good enough? Like, how do you assess which dog is going to be better?
So if I can't controllably walk my dog down the sidewalk, then I probably need to spend a little more time training that before we then just go for that run. Some people like to get going, and then their dogs may kind of calm down as we get jogging, running, what have you, and then they settle into position. But not all dogs do. And so you might have dogs that are reactive to people or other dogs and will excessively bark. And so those are some signs that if they're pulling excessively or barking excessively, I might take a step back and try to train your dog through those challenges. And that's if you're struggling to do that on your own, that's where a dog trainer can help you.
And Maria,
if you're going to run in a group, right? Like you need to have some kind of etiquette. Is there like?
I think there should be a group plan.
Yes.
Everybody needs to know where they need to be.
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of times, like there are people that are not comfortable with dogs, even if they love dogs. Like mm-hmm. I love dogs. I have a dog. I still am leery because as a child, I was afraid of them. So like, I feel like we need to be careful about just making sure that everybody in the group feels safe. And that, because it can lead to injury if we're not careful. How how we do it.
I agree with you, Maria. And part of that comes to, you know, socialization becomes a really big thing to people when they have a dog. They want their dogs to like everybody. And one of the things that we work on at the Dog Wizard is that your dog needs to be neutral when it goes out in public. It needs to be well-mannered when it goes out in public, regardless of whether you're going to a restaurant, a park, or running with your dog in a group or on your own. And the dog doesn't need to feel that everyone is there for it. It needs to be able to go out and just kind of go with the flow at times. And then there can be structured socialization times with other dogs and people, etc.
And Maria, I'm going to ask you a question now as the running expert. What should a runner expect when you're running with a dog versus when you might be running alone? I mean, you should be able to give that dog a little more leeway, right? And not pull it along.
I mean, I'm a little bit of a jerk about this because it is dangerous to run if the dog is not trained. So I really feel like, and it's dangerous for the people around them, just because, you know, even if you stop to go to the bathroom and they jolt you and they move you, it's really easy as a runner to get injured that way. And so also I'll talk about this in my coach's drill. I see a lot of people that run with really bad form, especially with those things around their waist. You know, I often talk about like the jog strollers and stuff. I love the jog strollers when they have their children because they're pushing forward and they're using their glutes. A lot of times when you have that thing attached around your stomach, you're like sitting back in a chair when you're running. And so all of your motion is like behind you instead of forward. So you can, if you're doing that, it can cause injury down the road and you're not running efficiently as well. And I wouldn't want anybody to have bad habits. So it's all the more reason to hire Kirsten.
And how do you teach the dog I mean, okay, maybe the better question is, how do you know how long a dog can run? Like when do we look at it and say, nope, well, let's take a break?
That's a really good question, Leigh, because I think that a lot of times we're so in tune with our own bodies. We know when we're tired. We know when we've pushed it past a certain degree, if you will, of like building your endurance, and we can't really ask the dog that question. So with that being said, I always recommend people that regardless of what the activity is you're going to do, it's all about baby steps. So can your dog walk a mile? Can it walk a half a mile? Where is its level of fatigue, and what are those signs of fatigue? Those are really big things, especially in Florida, you know, or climates that are hotter or more humid, or even if you got the extreme and you're in Denver, Colorado at the height of winter, you need to know what your environments are and you need to address your dog for that. So if they need protective foot gear, if they need you to carry a water bottle and a collapsible water bowl, whatever they need, you need to think about that and be able to accommodate those needs. And if you see signs of fatigue, if they're overheating, you need to stop and cool them down and address that.
And what would those signs be? Because you know, dogs pant because they don't sweat. So what does fatigue look like versus just they're hot and they're exercising?
Very good question. And so you have things where you'll see the panting, the tongue hangs out further, it's further expanded. Those could all be initial signs. Is the dog avoiding doing the behavior? Are they just wanting to lie down? Are they wanting to pull away? Are you dragging them? Those would be all things. Avoidance is a big sign of fatigue. That they don't want to go on anymore.
And then what would you do then to help that? Would you just immediately stop? Would you try to get them into a cool spot? If you notice those fatigue signs, what do you do?
I would try to find some shade. I would try to find a way to walk and move them and calm and cool them down. Get them off if it's warm pavement or hot pavement, I would get them off that surface. If it's to the point that it's extreme and they need to seek medical attention, then yes, I would most certainly, when in doubt, just go. It's not a silly thing to walk in and have that concern with your veterinarian.
And what would that look like?
That could be that they actually can't move on any farther. They might be more, I don't want to say unconscious, but they could just be where they cannot physically move on anymore.
I hate to say it, I've had that happen with my Pickles dog. It's just a little dog. We went on a walk and I got too far out, and then we were walking back, and she just, I could just tell that it was completely different than just her being tired. And I picked her up, I brought her in, I put ice all over her, and I like
that you iced her because people think cold water And I'm not saying that you can't use cold water. It's just you have to be careful, because if you have a thick coated dog and you put them in cold water, then you can actually trap in some of the heat.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I like that you did cold water. Some people would like to put that more, ice, put that more on the belly where,
That's what I did, yeah.
or the underneath the chest to try to get that body cooled down.
And
I didn't know that. I have a personal question. Mocha, when we go, he can't run, but he does like to go on really long walks with me. And he's 12, but he will not take water ever when we are out. Like it doesn't matter if I bring his dish with him. It doesn't matter what I do. He just won't take it. Is that weird?
It's not weird. It's not uncommon that sometimes dogs just are a little challenging, and you might be able to find an additive that can encourage water. Like sometimes I will even do watermelon in small amounts.
That's smart.
Because it's so a lot of water in it, or apples. But, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a veterinarian, and things in moderation. So you're not going to go out and give them a big slice of watermelon. But are there other ways to inspire them
that makes sense.
to put that water? Do they like ice over the water? And could it be something where now today on the market, I'm sure there's a lot of additives that you can look at as far as that are pet formulated that can serve as electrolytes and things of that nature. But that's where I say do your homework, ask your veterinarian about that, and make sure you're giving that in the proper way.
Because they need that too when they're running, right? They need a certain amount of liquid and stuff when they're running and doing those activities, especially in Florida.
I believe so. Yes.
Well, because they're not sweating, but what is when they're panting? How is that cooling them down?
That's their way of like really getting the heat out of their body. That's why their tongue expands. That's just how they cool themselves down. And sometimes they don't really sweat from their paws, but you can feel a clamminess about their paws sometimes. So it's not necessarily sweating, but there are ways that they need to evaporate that heat, get that heat out of their system, and the panting is one way to do that.
And would you suggest cooler times of the day? This time of the year? Clearly,
in Florida, I know that's really hard. It was 78 degrees this morning,
and it was a cool morning. Yeah.
So, the way that I look at the things like this, Leigh, is, smarter, not harder kind of concepts. And I would rather personally take my dog out in the early morning, even if it is a little bit warmer, because ideally the ground should be a little bit cooler. And so it is a little more thoughtful for them at that time of day. But yes, you want to get to where you're going at the right time of day. I wouldn't go at high noon.
For you or them?
No, I don't recommend that.
I was just thinking dogs are the same as us.
When I see somebody jogging at like noon or 2, I'm like, what are you doing? That's hot.
I think that too. Trust me.
We all think that. And when you're out with your dog, what are some of the things that I wouldn't even know to ask because my sweet little pickles would never run with me? Like what are things that happen on that run that you need to already have thought about before you go out?
Can your dog go walk by people? Can your dog walk by other dogs and pay them no attention? I think that's one of the biggest things, because like even Maria touched on, it's dangerous if your dog doesn't understand what the game is. And if your dog lunges and pulls at somebody or a squirrel or a bird or whatever the case may be, it just doesn't make that running experience very fun.
Yes, we are running
dangerous.
for fun.
And you want to go out and have a good time. You don't want to go out and be like, oh, I got to go take my dog out.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to use this as an outlet for energy for their dogs. And where I say, hey, it's a great thing to go and do, but your dog needs some mental enrichment as well as physical. Your dog will build endurance to the physical, and at some point you're gonna be like, I can't run 20 miles with my dog to wear it out. And so here's where there's a balance. There's a balance. I've had people say that to me. Oh, I exercise my dog all the time and we run 5 miles twice a day uphill both ways. And I'm like, but your dog's not really you think about going to a conference and you sit in a chair all day and you're tired at the end of the day. there's a lot to be said for combining physical and mental fatigue or enrichment. And that's where dog training can come into play and help.
And so playing, is that enrichment when you play with them? So if you ran to a park and then played, is that, yeah.
You can. Nowadays, there's so many outlets for enrichment. It can be training. It can be scent work. It can be learning new games or tricks. And so it's just anything that makes them problem solve and think. And so that's where, definitely dog training can come into play.
And Maria, I know.
I've learned so much.
I know. Can we just, mentally, when runners, we're like, okay, I'm going to run this distance in this time. It takes a certain type of runner to not be type A when you're running with your dog, because your dog is going to need to stop, and your dog may, they need to drink the water. So you have to have a different expectation as a runner. And this is your dog's run with you. It's not you running with.
It's great on a recovery day.
Yeah.
On a recovery run day, it's great. I wouldn't take your dogs on a workout. You don't want to stop on those. But yeah, for like a recovery day or a run walk or something that you want to go extra slowly, then there are really a lot of benefits to running with a dog, especially for females that are, feeling not safe. I know a lot of women that do that. But you do need to do it correctly. So.
And do people come to you to teach their dog how to run with them, or is that something that's not as
It's not as common. Yeah. Usually people come to us when they have reactivity on the leash, when there's pulling on the leash, or my dog doesn't listen to me all the time. Those are some of the big ones.
And those are all things that need to be under control before a run.
I would think that the smart thing to do would have some skills under belt before you just charge out and go out the door. Yeah.
And does it matter? I mean, if it's old dog, new tricks, I mean, does it matter when a dog starts learning
I was
things?
literally going to ask that question.
We tell people all the time that puppies are almost clean slates. They're blank slates. And so, training, enrichment can happen as early as 3 months or as soon as you get them. When it comes to training, people ask me all the time, I have a 4-month-old dog. Is it too early? It is not too early to start working your dog and doing that. They just may not have the duration of their attention spans might be a little challenged, but you can start building those foundational steps to get to where when they are fully developed and you're going to want to do that several mile run, you can pace yourself and start teaching them when they are young for some concepts there.
What about a rogue 12-year-old Chihuahua? Is there any hope for him?
There's hope for your little Chihuahua. They may not go, little legs may not be able to go the distance, but on your recovery days.
He's just naughty. He's a rogue.
But that does.
He definitely doesn't. He notices everything.
But that brings up a very good point, Maria, when you talk about age of dog, your senior dogs, they need activity and they need movement just as good as the younger dogs. But you need to take the ages and stages into consideration so that you don't cause more harm than good. And then think about how to prepare your dog for leaving the house for that activity. Warm up and cool down are really important. And when you talk about warm up, I see a lot of runners that will stretch. And everything that I have been taught is you don't stretch cold muscles.
Yeah, you're not supposed to static stretch before a run either.
So know what you're doing. Just don't pretend like you practice it on TV.
Yeah, exactly. What does a warm up for a dog look like?
Good question. And so you can do more active movements than passive, hold stretching movements. So can they turn circles for a cookie? Can they walk a little bit before you just walk out the door and start sprinting? Mm-hmm. Can they down and stand to really get those shoulders and hips moving and do that a couple of times? There's just a lot of fun little things that you can do to get their bodies moving and get that circulation going before you just take them out and go. And then when you talk about the cool down, you want to be able to, and I'm sure Maria can build upon that lactic acid build up in the body. You want to be able to let that kind of come down and not just go straight from run in the door and get on the couch and be like, I'm done.
So what should a dog do?
I always recommend to people that if you're going to come off of a run, at least 5 minutes of walking, if not 10, 15, and really just let them cool down before you take them back inside. The other thing is that, here in Florida, it is hot.
Yes.
And so there are other ways around that. There are dog treadmills out on the market. And so can you warm up and cool down your dog in the comforts of your own home? You sure can. You could also do that when on your conditioning up to the 2 miles or the 3 miles. Can you work on a dog treadmill? And I do encourage dog treadmill over human treadmill because it's biped versus quadruped built. So there is a thing, and length of deck is super important. If you change a dog's gait, then you can cause some injury there and some muscle, some compensations.
They're so much like us.
Dogs, they're just like us.
They're just like us. And so,
dogs are just like us.
So there is, and then the speeds. Human treadmills don't really account for the quadrupeds. So that is a thing there as well. So just know your equipment, ask questions, find a dog trainer or a canine fitness trainer that's going to help you with some of these things, and they'll happily help you.
And sorry, so you mentioned buying the gear like a dog treadmill. What are some other gear that we should have? Just like with running, Maria and I talk about, when you first start, you're like, hey, I got this one thing, I got this pair of shoes, and then as you learn and love it more, you buy more and more stuff. So what would be some of the accessories?
I would, like I mentioned earlier, you have reflective wear, depending upon time of day that you're going. You can wear reflective wear. Your dog can wear reflective wear. Your leash could be reflective. You can have, there are vests with lights and all kinds of things that you can add to make your dog more visible. I would just be careful that you're not putting something on them that's really super heavy and not breathable, because then that can make them hotter. So just kind of look at and see what's out on the market and what works best for you and your dog. When you talk about retractable leashes, I think they have a place. And to me, they're places when you're traveling with your dog and you pull over to that rest area and you need your dog to go potty. That's a great time for the retractable leashes. But for running or general training, I don't recommend them because you can't coordinate that very well with locking it and unlocking it and all those things there. And so it can just be something a little more challenging and can cause some issues there.
So you think just like a lead leash?
Regular old leash, 6 feet, it can be a great thing there. I know that some people are they like those bungee leashes. I'm not a personal fan of the bungee leashes, but if that's what works for you, that's great. I think that the bigger thing is that your dog learns its position and where to be.
And so, Maria, I'm going to bring you back in here on that for the runner as well, because if you're just holding that leash, a leash that's not a retractable leash, you might have better form. You could just put it on your wrist.
Oh yeah,
and that would keep you as a runner correct.
Yeah, the form thing is if the dog is really pulling you to a certain place or pulling your body out of alignment. That's when I worry about dogs. Or a lot of times I've seen this if they're running in a group, the dog will like cut across everybody and then it throws the person off, and then the other people in the group like are tripping over themselves. And we as runners already trip over ourselves.
Yes, we do.
So we have to be careful of that. But yeah, the form is really important, and it's important.
All right, Kirsten, one question that I'm assuming I know the answer to, but let's say you're trail running and you're not on the street. Is there ever a place for unleashed?
If your dog has a solid recall, that could be an option for you. We do off-leash reliability training at the Dog Wizard, so that is something that can be an added addition to a program that we offer. And it just becomes that you have to be able to have a way to call your dog off. You never know what you're going to encounter out on those trails. It could be an animal. It could, learning a lot about alligators in Florida.
Yes,
There could be safety reasons why you need that reliable recall. And so that's where the training really comes into play, that your dog my dogs can go off and play and run and be dogs and do dog things, but when I need them to come back to me, they have to listen, and they need to be controlled and have that structure as well.
So there is a place, but it is for the elite dogs. Is that like the ones that are, because if you encounter an alligator can move very quickly.
Yes, they can.
So just know your dog and know if it doesn't come back immediately. Like, it's not safe. It's not that
If your dog cannot recall inside your home environment, then it is not ready to go off on the trail and take the leash off and pray.
yes.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, I think about it, that if the one time your dog doesn't come back, and immediately that could be its end. And so, like, you don't want this because you thought it was fun to have him be able to run around be the reason that he or she doesn't come home ever, because it can be such a dangerous situation.
Well, and I think that the average pet owner humanizes their dogs a lot, and they say, "Oh, I want this for you," and the dog's just really living in the moment, and they aren't thinking like, "Man, I was really wanting to be off leash right now." They just might be enjoying your company, and so that's where you just need to be really aware of your surroundings, and if your dog if your dog isn't able to come when it's called without distractions, it's sure not going to be able to come with distractions. So that's where, like, one of the things that we do with the Dog Wizard is we have support class, and it's a free service to a program, and we continue to work with dog owners to keep that recall in check and other behaviors there that they've learned, because that's the way we can support our clients and keep them, maintaining their training.
And is a long run ever bad for a dog?
If the dog's
Good
ready
question.
for it.
Yeah. If it can be bad for it, if it's
No, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that distance, as far as is the dog conditioned enough for that
that's right.
distance.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, if depending upon how long. I mean, look at the mushing dogs and different the Antarctic areas. They can really go endurance and distance, but they're trained and conditioned to be able to do those distances. So it's just, again, going back to what's your dog prepared for.
Because just like Maria, when we started,
Yeah.
just
Just again, like us.
again, we didn't start out going 13-minute miles or 26 miles. We started going 1 mile if we were lucky.
Yes.
And so just because that's where your conditioning is, you certainly need to think about that your dog has to build up that same, even though they seem like they are boundless injuries and boundless energy.
Mm-hmm.
But doing something like that consistent, straight, repetitive motion, I can imagine needs to be built up.
It does.
So I know you made a list. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about things?
Goodness, I think we've covered everything on the list.
So if someone, canine fitness and canine strength training, is that something that is offered for anyone? I mean, people understand basic dog training, sit, stay, roll over, but what is any dog up for strength training and fitness training?
I think so. I would be of that mindset. I think it's a great addition to general training. I mean, yes, I want my dogs to be able to sit down, heel, and do all those things there. But, sometimes that kind of can get a little mundane, as far as just what's hard today.
Yeah.
I did that already. And so here is where, with that fitness training, again, them learning different exercises, and there is fitness equipment for dogs as well. It's kind of crazy. But there's inflated equipment that gives them different surfaces and different textures and different movements. And it's always, you can change it up and make it new. And so this is where you can incorporate in your general obedience skills with that sit and that down and those things, and make it more challenging.
And Maria, do you have anything to say about what runners need to know?
No, the whole time I was just thinking that I think Kirsten should come up with a dynamic warm up for dogs, because I feel like that's kind of what she was saying.
Well, you probably do that. Yeah, right?
We can do that.
Yeah.
Happy to.
We'll
And
put
then
it.
the other thing I was thinking of was that we needed some inflatable toys to make things more fun, right, Leigh?
They do have those races where I've done one before where it is like big water slides, and I was a little more. I was more engaged in that, but it's but as a fun alternative.
And I also feel like I could probably take some of what you said, and I would sometimes like to put some of my runners on a leash to pull them back because they're running too fast. So, hey guys, you're going too fast. Come on back.
You should really start doing that when you run with people. You should just link on to them and be like, "This is the speed that we're going. We need to."
Oh my gosh, one of my old coaches used to hang on to the back of my shirt, and she'd pull me. She'd be like, "Not yet."
Kirsten, if you listen to some of our previous episodes, we're all about going slow so that you don't overextend and run your body down. So the same thing with your dogs. Just make sure that they're not racing off. There's things.
Pace yourself.
Pacing. Well, thank you guys. This was so very interesting.
Thank you,
Maria and
Kirsten.
you and I learned
Thanks.
so much about.
I learned so much today.
About
I
how
loved
to.
it.
I mean, you said that we often humanize our dogs, but their physical bodies, their physical ways, they are interestingly more like us, but they're mentally maybe a little different. So that's what the training is. That's why you speak dog versus speak human.
That's right.
All right.
Maybe we should all learn from them and live more in the moment, right?
Oh,
That would be a really good skill to carry
Yeah.
over.
All right, Kirsten, the dog wizard, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week on Run for Fun. Bye, everybody.
Bye.